So yeah, hello. I'm not the CEO. I'm just a senior strategy analyst. So please, everyone, come on board. So we heard a lot of fascinating things about the products and what kind of change is coming to the industry. And in our panel now, we want to talk about the business side of things. And I think it's really fascinating to watch what's been talked about here at this conference. I mean, it's like everyone agrees that at one point the future will be, cars will be shared, it will be electric, a lot of driverless. So the question is, when will this happen, and how will it look like? So what percentage of cars will be shared, and which directly, as a consequence, what will it mean for the market size of the car business, for example? So before we dive in, let's introduce ourselves very shortly. As I said, I'm Marcel Weiss. I'm a senior strategy analyst at Excited Commerce, which is an e-commerce business intelligence company. And
yeah, my name is Freese. I'm the general manager of Uber in Germany.
Hi everybody, I'm Itai Ben Jacob. I'm from the RWE Innovation Hub. So whoever doesn't know, RWE is one of the top 5 biggest energy providers in entire Europe. The Innovation Hub is tasked with coming up with new business models for our company. And my personal focus point is e-mobility, which is a completely natural, let's say, business extension for energy providers.
I'm Holger Weiss. I'm still a managing director with Aupeo for a couple of weeks.
So one last thing before we start, as if you wanted to make a meta comment on the change coming to the industry, Florian Rothfuß from Porsche unfortunately can't be with us today because he missed his flight. So
he couldn't be fast enough at the airport.
So interestingly, we heard today that 10% of the users of Drive Now are abandoning their own cars. So this is an aspect that's been a lot talked about, like that car sharing is directly affecting car ownership, which itself directly has consequences for the car business. So my question to you from Uber, do you have similar numbers from your users? Because there's a lot of debate is going on. That's like Uber is going to be an alternative for ownership itself.
Yes, we see those effects actually in our most mature markets. So where we really offer an affordable and really reliable product, people think about giving up their car. But let me be clear, like nobody will give up his first car just because of car sharing or also Uber or ride sharing services. It's the mixture of all, right? So if you compare different transport options, most of them actually, you can take them from A to B, and you can take a different mode back from B to A. That could be a taxi, could be an Uber, could be a ride-sharing option, could be also public transport, right? So these are very, very complementary, and in the end, the mix actually makes people to think about, well, does it really make sense that I'm spending on average in a OECD country roughly 9,000 euros per year on a car? Can't I just get a mobility mix through all these other options? And there's actually only one other mode that you have to go from A to B and from B to A back, right? That's your own car. And I think like if we talk about innovative mobility options, it's, yes, we are all like competing in the same area because we want to get all the ride from A to B, but actually maybe you benefit on the way back from B to A. So I think in the end, all these options are like one of many factors that will influence how we deal with our own car, and if it's not the first car, it's maybe the second or third car. Especially in the US, we see those tendencies very quickly, yes.
So it's a question of the richness of services available, more or less. So you said mature markets. Can you give like when do you start talking about a mature market?
Yeah, so I think in the end, it depends on the ecosystem. For example, if we look into a market like London, London obviously has the city toll, so it's like already penalizing car ownership by itself. So if we then get into a market like that, it's much easier. People think about that much earlier. In Germany, for example, it's on that front a little bit tougher, but we have other supporters like car sharing. Berlin is the biggest car sharing market in the world in terms of cars, so we have other supporters that make all of us think, do we really need a car in an urban area like Berlin?
So according to a study from the Boston Consulting Group, most politicians administering cities believe that self-driving cars will be here within 10 years and will affect cities. So is this a time frame, when you look at innovation and business models at RWE, do you see, is this time frame realistic, or how do you look at the market?
It's an interesting question. Well, at 10 years, it's a time frame that I think very dramatic changes will happen, not just in the mobility market, but also in the energy market for sure. And this is something we in RWE realized, and this is what we are doing currently. We're bringing new business models internally first, and then we're testing on the market in order, and the goal is to implement them by 2020. As some of you probably know, by 2022, there's going to be a shutdown of nuclear reactors, so the entire business model of energy providers will be totally disrupted. Therefore, this time frame is definitely something realistic, and more than that is something that we really have to stand with, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's like you look at innovation in the business models, and you have to think about what does it mean for you as an energy provider, and what can you bring to the table as well when it goes from the combustion engine to electric mobility. So you looking like a vertical integration, so you can more service, not like you just get the energy from us and you get more services, or what direction are you looking at?
Yeah, so naturally, energy provider companies, they are service companies. That's first and most important thing. And in the future, energy is going to be such, let's say, a commodity because of renewable energies, because of decentralization of energy. And consumption, on the other hand, is going to be far, far larger than today because of our mobile devices, because of electrification of mobility. So definitely, we are thinking in direction of business models that are much more than just energy provision. There are services, so vertically integrated with other partners, with other either mobility manufacturers or services such as Uber, car sharing, and so on and so forth. But yeah, this is the direction. So be like a more holistic service provider. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So every company has like to rethink itself, it's the definition of itself. So we just talked about like, I think I like to look at a change of the industry within stages. I look at 3 stages. So we have the first stage, what we just talked about, like we're going from the combustion engine to electric mobility, to electric vehicles. So it's the first stage. And the second stage that comes after that, that's just made possible, is we're going to autonomous cars, and it's just going to be possible because the first stage lowered the market entry barriers to the market, so more manufacturers can come to the market and can do stuff there. But what I find interesting is that these 2 stages that we mainly talked about today is like where more or less a sustaining innovation. So you can, if you like Audi, or if you like Daimler or Ford, that's something that's right up your alley. You're still going to sell the vehicle. And I find it's interesting that the next stage is where it gets interesting is the third stage, and that's when come software-based services on top that's going to be available. And it's so Holger, you come from the music business, from the software side of things with Aupeo, with music streaming, and you're working with car manufacturers to integrate the service. So you're seeing both sides. You see the software business with really fast iteration, and you have seen how fast or slow the car business evolves, what refresh rates, what development rates you have. So what do you think? Will these established companies, will they be able to keep up with the speed of change that is going to come to the industry?
I mean, that's probably one of the most fundamental questions beside autonomous driving and all the stuff we discussed before. I mean, maybe first to add on that, what you said, it's two phases. I even would say it's three phases, because we had horses before, right? And then we had the engine, and now it's autonomous driving. And some people told me in a discussion, autonomous driving never will come because I like to drive my car. And my answer was, but there are also people who still like to ride a horse, right? And that is something where we see at the moment that after the invention of the wheel and maybe 6,000 years of not really change into that mobility, right? Now we had the engine for about 100 years, but the acceleration, and Dirk made this also clear in his previous presentation, acceleration of innovation and the way we will be mobile will be phenomenal, right? So in a speed and in an acceleration speed that many people cannot really imagine. And there are some issues, or there are some questions about when will this happening, when will autonomous driving really hit the road? Will this be a technical question, or will be this also a legal and a social question? Will people accept that there is car driving around without a driver? Things like that. And then there are elements that we all facing here at the moment, or that we see, right? I mean, I think back in 2008, I was on a panel in Telematics Update in Detroit, and was asked how long will it take until the car will be connected. It happened that I worked for a company that some of you will remember called Nokia. And I said, every car is connected because you all have your phones with you. And this did not really change fundamentally. And we have to be very careful that we don't mix up the things, because on the one hand we have telematics services like we heard this morning from BMW, predictive maintenance, etc., 10, 15 years old, right? But now it's about bringing the internet in the third age of mobility to the car, right? And that is something that is mixed with a tremendous shift in the industry, where the influence and the level of innovation comes more through software than through hardware. So, and this comes back to your initial question. I don't want to answer too much, to speak too much about Aupeo and our experience, more about this general impact on the industry, right? So what we have today, and this started back with the first iPod, right? People in North America made a decision depending of buying the next car in a size of $25,000, $30,000 US, also depending on the fact how well the iPod was integrated, right? Believe me, the car makers hate this, right? I mean, in a very fragmented world that they controlled end-to-end for many, many years, 100 years, external standard they don't like, right? We all know what we're doing at the moment when we're in the car with our smartphones, right? You're all writing SMS, you're all writing WhatsApp, you're all writing emails, you're not allowed, you're still doing this because it's convenient, it's fast, etc., right? But now you have to see that the traditional industry, the car industry, has product cycles of, let's say, 7 to 9 years in innovation, right? So planning cycles and so on and so forth. But an app, if you don't get an update of your favorite app every second week, you think the guys are bankrupt or lazy, right? I mean, that's something you get nervous. I mean, what's going on, right? And to get this between 9 years and two weeks, right? That is the challenge in an environment where we see increasingly pressure coming from consumers into the car, right? And I cannot give a final answer here, and I would not dare to give a final answer, but it's probably the biggest challenge to this industry that they have faced in 100 years, and it will be much faster to cope with that than many of them can imagine at the moment.
But might this not be helping or accelerating the change from the combustion engine to electric, that the production process is so sophisticated and it takes so long to bring a new model to market when you have a traditional car with a combustion engine, where anyone who's competing with an electric car can do so much more, and maybe just thinking about for the near future can do things different. Like, for example, we have seen with Tesla that is using like the cloud for updates and bringing autopilot, semi-automatic, autonomous driving to the existing cars, to cars that's already has sold. So isn't it like that we're already seeing a new company that is building a different infrastructure to be more agile, to be more able to change than what established car manufacturers have?
Absolutely. I mean, that's even more challenging, that the pressure is not only coming from the consumer electronic side, from the software side, it's also coming from the fact that we will see a major shift into electric mobility where it can work with modules, and we will see completely new brands coming up, Faraday, Next TV, etc. There might be a Samsung car, there will be an Apple car, etc., and so on, right? But so from the pure manufacturing side, I don't see too much of a pressure on the industry. There will be pressure, and the pressure will be to face more competition, because today there are probably, I don't know, 2,000 car makers in the world, but there are 25, 30 significant ones, right? And that will change, because also the lifestyle changes, and Generation Y is focusing on different type of brands, because it's not anymore the car brand who's driving my values, if you want so, right? But it's still, I mean, moving a target with 150 kilometers per hour, right, with living humans in, that is something, there is still a question of safety, there is still a question of reliability, maintenance, etc. And I think Tesla is an awesome company, right, no doubt, but they also have no legacy, right? I mean, that is something that we also would have to accept at a certain point of time, that, and we all know this, even software comes to a point where you say, okay, now it's the next generation, and then you have a legacy that you build up. So, but if it comes to the software itself, right, that is exactly the question: how quick existing OEMs will adopt mentally, not technically, mentally, that there is no way back, right? That a car will maybe not be available in a better version, right? But definitely has to have an updatable interface.
Yeah, and I think like connecting to that, what I see is really that shift, that we have like hardware providers, which is also like the deep grounded engineering power behind it. So like if you always hear like Volkswagen, where the CEO is measuring like the distance between the car door, so it's a very
XCO.
Like the XCO measuring really like the distance that you have in the frame between the doors. And all these companies now have to really get a DNA shift, basically, towards more service-oriented business models. And with those, very often it's much more a software-minded, like say, skill set you need. And I think if you go back then to what we heard today, and why also like a lot of these automotive players are in that, is maybe some of these car sharing or innovative models we saw also today that Audi is launching, that is very much maybe a standalone business, but I believe it's also a lot to push back, to push in a new DNA into these companies, become much more customer-centric than they were before, and thinking more of a mobility service than they could possibly be in just selling cars.
Yes, absolutely. We already touched on services that's going to be on top of, let's say, the car platform, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about this, because Uber is already, you're still a very young company, but you're doing a lot. You're not expanding only internationally, but you're also doing in your more mature markets. You're experimenting with new services on top. I mean, for example, you integrate with airlines for pickup at airports and so on. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about some new initiatives like Uber Eats, because I think something like this, when you build a big company on the on-demand economy that's going to tip into resources with peer-to-peer, and it's building more on top of this, not just bringing persons from A to B, but making more services available. I think you're going to create a lot of value and going to be quite an important and big player in the market. So to get a glimpse into the future, maybe you can tell a little bit more about these new services you're working on?
Yeah. I think like if you like take a step back and look at Uber, I mean like the initial product is not so innovative, right? Disruptive. What we do is we connect individual riders to drivers on a platform. So that's a pure platform business where you connect those. What happens in the end, and what was the first step of our disruption, was really trying to bring downtimes of those drivers down. Usually, if you look into a traditional, let's say, taxi services, they do 1 trip per hour, so you pay him a lot for the downtime. So that's why it makes sense that you pay him 20 euros for a trip to the airport, because it will be probably the only income he gets during that hour, and that's roughly what he needs. If you can bring that up to 2.5 trips per hour, obviously you can lower the price. We can take a nice commission, and also we can give back low prices to the rider. So that's the first innovation of Uber. The second one is actually Uber Pool, and that's where we want to take our business in general all across the globe, where we not only have one person in a car, so you order a car and he picks you up and drops you off at the point B. No, on the way, we match you with somebody that wants to go the same direction. So basically, it's a shared car. We drive up again the utilization of the car. It's more income for the driver, lower prices for you because they share the ride. And then actually, we change mobility fundamentally just because we take off really actual trips. So later today, when everybody's going to the airport, we could so easily share so many cars, right? So that's actually the second part of the disruption. And then the next one, and that's I think what you're leading to a little bit, is once you have that infrastructure, so you have like all these cars running around in the city, you can just run on that network additional products. And Uber Eats is, for example, only one of those ideas, and we are testing and working on it in a couple of markets, where you have the same value proposition of Uber, so very transparent product, very affordable. At the tip of the button, you press and you get your favorite meal during lunchtime. And you see that this is only working because there are already so many cars utilized on the network that it's just an incremental cost for you to get the food delivered. And we can imagine many more things to be delivered. I guess passenger transportation is the toughest, but then once you master that, we can think of packages or connect to e-commerce platforms that are delivering your address for the evening. You press a button and it gets delivered to you in a couple of minutes. So you see the initial step of Uber is actually not so disruptive. It's more like the second and third wave we want to take.
I knew there's a reason for your valuation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, right? Because Uber is not like it is an international transportation company, but it doesn't own a car fleet. As you have a mobile app where you use to organize all these services. So if a lot of value lies there, so what is RWE going to do? Are you going into the mobile app business, or what can an energy company bring to the market?
Okay, so at the moment we have a daughter company, Efficienz, AV Efficienz, that is responsible for making the infrastructure for charging e-cars, EVs, and plug-in hybrids. Their business model is, let's say, quite straightforward. It's making the infrastructure, charging per energy. And what we are thinking in the Innovation Hub is how to actually utilize this infrastructure and let's say, extract much more value out of it from the business side, right? Because just charging, well, it's not going to last forever, especially because energy prices will drop, or at least will not be marginal enough for us to make profit. So whether we're going to come into the apps business, well, I don't know. It's a good question. And even if so, it will not be so straightforward, because we will use smart partnerships, so to say, with existing partners, like I mentioned before, Uber or whatever, car sharing companies that are already in the market, and there's so much value there to be extracted from a smart cooperation with them. And I think a lot of corporations, especially from our field, are realizing this, that partnering with existing players in the market is so much more smarter than doing everything by ourselves. I think this is the silo thinking of the old model. Let's do everything ourselves. We are so big, we have so much money, let's do it ourselves. And today we realize, I mean, if we cooperate in a smart way, right, with existing players that already have market share, that already have the market insights, which is even more important, yeah, then we can extract so much more value and bring so much more value to the end user than just try to launch another mobility app, for example.
Okay, so before we open it up to questions in the audience, I want every one of you to ask one simple question. Do you think, so 10 years from now, do you think there will be more or less cars sold worldwide within a year? Do you think the more or less cars sold?
I think there will be sold less cars, but I believe that they will be used much more, so the lifetime will be much shorter. So I'm not sure like if in total the number of cars sold will be less, but we will see less cars on the streets, yes.
So yes, just from researchers I've already seen by top consultancies, which I will not say their names, obviously. The global numbers will rise, actually. So more cars will get out to the market, but we will see this, let's say, interim stage where we'll see much more plug-in hybrids, and there also more EVs in the future. And I agree with you that we will see a point in the future where the quantity globally will decline because of car-sharing models, because of better efficiency. But definitely electrification will take place, and yeah, we are waiting for this, definitely.
Now, I'm now in a lucky situation that you told me that there will be more cars, and clever researchers told you that. So there will be more cars. No, I would agree. I think there will be more cars. We see this data that actually Uber in New York did not reduce the number of cabs, but the number of cars being owned, etc. But there will be more and more Uber cars and other cars, etc. Logistic transportation will be a big impact. E-commerce, we will see emerging markets, countries like China, India, Brazil, etc., will not immediately adopt car sharing because they say that's good for me. It's also an ownership thing, right? So I think for the next 10 years, the way, and I would agree with Christian, the way and the overall ratio how vehicles in general will be used will change, and the way we are all mobile, or our mobility will change, but the overall number of cars, maybe one day they will be reduced, but not in the next 10 years.
Okay, fascinating. Maybe I wanted to ask who will be the main manufacturer in 10 years, but let's open up to questions from the audience. Anyone? No? I think we have answered everything. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcel. And thanks to all the participants.